Hey, what's up, guys? Daddy's got a race here. Testing a new GPU. This is test 3, and finally, I think I finally found good settings here. I'm running an RTX 3090 from NVIDIA. So, been struggling to find the right settings for a racing and to be able to stream and maintain at least 60 FPS. So let's see how we go here. So far, lots of cars and maintaining 75 FPS, which is good. Still streaming high quality. I forgot to ignore my wheel. I forgot to open the software that controls it, so you won't see anything changing here. So far, so good with the FPS. Everything's running smoothly. The image doesn't look pixelated. Still maintaining good 72 FPS. But let's see when the race really starts. Ooh, I was looking at the FPS, almost hit the car in front of me. The FPS. Oh my god, the guy hit me. Well, through the whole crash I was able to maintain over 60 FPS, so I think it's a good test. Let's start over. Okay, let's start this over, but before, let me open my Simagic software, so I have the telemetry on the wheel. There you go, it's connected. Just yet to the right settings that I have saved here. There you go, iRacing. And we're good to go. Slightly above what I was expecting here. There you go. So let's see again. The guy started without me. Running smoothly, 66 FPS, still broadcasting. So good, didn't seem too weird. Really nice, very nice. Almost hit the guy. So far keeping 92 FPS. This is a track that doesn't have a lot of detail, so probably need to get... Oh my god, seriously? I have zero practice with this car, guys, so please give me a little slack here. I just wanted for the speed to see how the FPS would be in very fast drifting cars, and how the to feel if the FPS was being affected. Nudge. Oh, little one come. Oh my god. There's nothing I could do. The guy crashed in my phone. Oh, this was my bad. Oh, that was a big one. I was paying attention to my DRS. I wanted to see if it really opened. And that happened. Don't ever do that, guys. Ah, boy. I was waiting for the DRS beep and didn't hear anything. I don't know if it's some sort of setting. And this, I never race with this car, so let me see if we have something in the sound. But before we go to that, so it seems to be running pretty smoothly. So let's go to the settings. So as you can see, I'm running triple monitors. And you know, if you have triple monitors and you're running on NVIDIA or any other graphic card that supports VSync, enabling these two options, render CNC 3 projections and enable SMP MVP. This enables your GPU to simultaneously multi-project That actually, reduces the CPU overhead. iRacing is very CPU intensive. With all the simulations, the physics require a lot of CPU power and calculations in real time. So the less you load the CPU, the better. So these settings puts the load more on the GPU than the CPU. So as you can see, the way I approached this, I put it on max quality, and of course I had problems. Frame rates were really low, and then I started to reduce it a few things. So on this section on the top left, the sky clouds, the sky, you may notice some issues if you don't put in the high details for the sky and the clouds. Sometimes the sky do this weird little sudden transition. So if the sun is going down or the clouds are moving, sometimes you will see these weird transitions. They are not smooth as in a real world. So if you put it on high, it will be a lot smoother. You won't notice that. So if you care about that, leave the sky clouds in high, but that it's very CPU intensive, especially when you're racing on a cloudy day, lots of clouds. That requires a lot of render. I don't know why they render the clouds the way they're doing here. Many other games they simply use transitions between pictures, like in Gran Turismo, which is a lot less CPU intensive. Cars, I like to run cars in high detail. They just look pretty, look realistic. They don't look pixelated, things like that. Especially with the decals and stuff like that. So cars, it's okay. I was able to run pit objects in high detail. This is good to see the pit crew, everybody changing tires, especially in NASCAR. You can see the pit crew moving, something that it's more realistic. So I was able to run with pit objects in high detail. Event details sometimes is good. Even if you go to Sebring, for example, and you reduce the event details, some parts of the track don't actually render and make me loses my braking points, things that I use as a reference, they disappear. So I usually leave event details in high. Even in my former GPU, which was a RTX 360, I was using this setting in high detail. Grandstands consume a lot of power, and you can barely see people in the grandstands. So this setting you can leave in low. You still see people, but just like these mock-ups of people in the grandstands. When you are broadcasting something and you are using the replay, you come to the replay graphics settings, and here you put the grandstands in high detail, because then you will have a 3D render of the people in the grandstands. But then you are not racing. It doesn't require a lot of that, so you can record the replay in high resolution and then broadcast it. You don't even need to stream and record the replay at the same time. Same for the grandstands. I meant the structures for the grandstands. The crowds is what I meant, what I was explaining. How they will be rendered. So I use the low detail. Actually, the grandstands here, some tracks like RBR, Red Bull Ring, if you put in low detail, they will completely remove the grandstands in certain areas. So for those, I would leave in high. I'm actually do this small change here. I'll put this in high just to see how the FPS goes. Objects are certain other things that you see trackside that are good to have, to render. I leave those in high detail too. Particles, medium detail is fine. This is just to see, smoke, dust, the marbles on the track, things that you barely pay attention so fast. So there's no need to leave them in high detail. When you're going to replay, then you can leave then the smokes, the dust when someone goes off track will look very real. But you know, you can keep it lower here. Um, I try to draw more cars, so on a race, let's say you're racing on a official championship, you might have 40 cars on the track. So the more cars you put here, of course, it consumes more GPU power. So what I do usually, I rarely see races with more than 30 people, so that's why I put 30 here. And then you have this other setting that lets you control, how the cars will be drawn in the mirrors. So this is where the car draws in the track. This is where the car draws in the mirrors. The first value is for the main cameras, and the value into parentheses is inside the mirrors. So you may see 20 cars on a track from an outside camera, but in your mirror in the car you probably will see only 8 cars there. This saves a lot of CPU power, so if GPU power. So if you feel like your FPS is dragging, this is one of the first settings I would adjust after uh, the things we just discussed here on the top left. There is this other setting here that's very interesting, is if the system feels the GPU is overloaded, it can start to decrease the quality of certain things. So here you can determine how do you want this to affect. So if you want to affect the road around you, or if you don't want it to be affected at all, you can turn this off. So this is just something you can leave, because if by any chance you have too many cars with too many graphics to render, it might, decrease the road, the scenery around you, to get you back to an acceptable frame rate. By acceptable frame rates, you can define here, how much you want to keep as a minimum. You will try to keep that, but it's not gonna always have that limit if you are strained. I usually put the limit of my monitors, they can do 144 hertz or 144 frames per second. So why not putting 144 here? Because I don't want to, overdo on my monitors. So I always set it a little bit lower because it won't be noticeable and you are saving a little bit of GPU power here. This is the part where you can really beautify the game. So anisotropic filtering. It's how things like the gravel, the walls, all of these things will look. You can see they are a little bit, weird here on the right because I'm using 8x. If you put 16x, they will look absolutely beautiful and real, but that really decreases your GPU power. So only if you may want to trade, maybe you want to lower the details here on the left and put, maybe you care more about the track details than everything around you. It's always about, it's always subjective here. You go with your own tastes. And these AA samples is how the anti-aliasing mode will operate. So usually 2 is really good, 4 is excellent, 8 is supreme, but this also significantly decreases frames per second. This is good to have, dynamic track data is the rubber, the skid marks, all those things that make it more realistic, so I leave it on. For some reason, and it would have dynamic tire data before, they are not enabling this for whatever reason, I don't know why. Maybe it's because, I don't know if it's because none of these are affecting that, so I don't know why this option, and actually these other particle options were disabled to me. I probably did something and I need to adjust and find that. Shadow maps, it's what, create the shadows between objects on the track and other cars, so this makes things a lot more real, shadows from the tree, so always good to have the shadow mapping and the object self-shadowing, but if you are on the strain for FPS, those are things that also save a lot, so you can turn it on. For night races, this is how, if you want then you create night shadow maps. Night races, I don't see a lot of shadows anyway, so I left them off. I actually need to do a test on a night race to see what goes on. And walls and highlights is how the shadows from the lights projects on walls from the car's headlights, and how they will project in yourself and the other objects. This is how many lights you'll be able to see at a given time, and how they cast the shadows, so more lights, more realistic, but at a huge cost of performance. So lights consume a lot of GPU power. This filter controls a little bit of the shadow. They help to improve the quality, but they cost a lot of performance. So you can opt for a simple filter. The quality won't be as good, but that saves a lot of GPU as well. Usually the PCF4 filter it's okay and doesn't consume a lot. These are some settings that I still work to understand, but apparently it's how much of the cube maps they can pre-render, so it kind of take things in advance. 0 is the default value. You can increase, but apparently this is connected to how many GPUs you have. So if you have 2 GPUs, you can put 2 here, but 0 is the default value. And of course you can still adjust the shader quality. The more you put here, the more GPU you consume. I have my steering wheel here, so there's no need to see the steering wheel twice for me. I position my monitors in the exact position of the car, so I hide it. It saves GPS as well. Trees, I don't see why enhancing the quality of the trees. You can see the trees here. Even when standing still, they look pretty good. And at 300 kilometers an hour, I won't care about the tree leaves if they look nice. So I turn off all the tree quality things. On replays, you put it on, you put a lot of quality, it will look more realistic. This is about the shadowing on the trees. This consumes a lot of GPU power, so turn it off. Cockpit mirrors, I don't like their virtual mirror. I like to use the real mirrors in the cars. Here, as you can see in the replay, you only see this black thing because in the replay they are probably turning off. So you can come here. What are the mirror effects? Gee, I lost them. Cockpit mirrors, there you go. So those will, now you can see the mirrors here. What else? So, how much detail you want to see in the mirrors? This significantly increases the GPU power, because if you have 3 mirrors in the car or 3 mirrors in a rear camera, you're rendering that image multiple times. If you add detail, you're multiplying that effect, so this consumes a lot of GPU power. I recommend leaving it off. Even with it off, you can see the image quality on the rear view mirrors is pretty good, so there's no need to put more than that. Headlights, medium detail is fine, and I like to see the headlight effects in the mirror. That kind of gives it a cool effect, especially in night races. My virtual mirror is off, And this section here, this is actually consumes a lot of power. For example, I would love to use HDR effects. That gives a lot more realistic imaging, you know, but it consumes an insane amount of GPU. So uh, unfortunately, I can't use it. If you have a pretty badass GPU, it costs, I don't know, $2,000-3,000, then you can probably use HDR. I still have to experiment with this a little bit, so I'll play with it a little, probably on another video. Also, these things here, they make it look amazing, but it also consumes a lot of GPU power. Um, this is the particle distortion. I still need to find about the motion blur. I think there are some settings here about motion blur, but I don't. Oh, there you go, motion blur. I think I will actually turn them on the low strength. You can see a little warning here. This is a post-processing effect, and you know, can really degrade performance. But I'm gonna test it out because the motion blur really makes it really look realistic, you know, when you're driving. But I'll test it out later. Other than that, so you can see here, uh, iRacing only recognizes 8 megabytes of video RAM, even though my GPU card has 24 gigabytes. The game only recognizes 8. What I can do though in this case, I can put it all to the maximum because I still have a lot of GPU memory left. But if your GPU card only has 8 megabytes, then it's always recommended to at least leave 100 or so megabytes free to swap data within the GPU memory. If you put it to the max, you will start to see a lot of frame drops and some weird things happening. So I wouldn't recommend putting to the max if you don't have any video memory left. And your system memory, my system for example has 16 gigabytes, so I don't use everything for it. I leave a lot of memory available for Windows and other things to run. But that's it. So thanks for watching and have a good night. I'll proceed with some other tests here. You feel free to watch them. Let's see how the motion blur and the high grandstand detail will affect the performance. We were working with close to, I think it was 90 frames per second, something like that, give or take. Now, yeah, we are down to 70. Yeah, we definitely lost 20 frames per second. But this is still good. Let's see as the race goes. Anything above 60 actually, it's more than what the human eye can perceive. So anything, if you can keep above 60 all the time, you're perfectly fine. Oh, but why do I need, you know, more than that? Well, it kind of, especially in high-speed movements, like in a race car, you know, might avoid some eye strain if you have more available. But it, you know, it's just more to be like super excessive. You don't actually move. You can see I'm still maintaining 77, which is good. So far so good. I was looking at the FPS again. Sorry, I suck at this. Let's start because I want to do a complete lap. because certain parts of the track have more detail. So I want to check the FPS all the way over. Race starts are often very intensive in terms of GPU consumption, so you can see as the race starts, the FPS drops significantly. That's why some people test the GPU with only their car on the track or on a practice session, and you don't have a race start, all the cars together, so that's not realistic. And then when they have a race start, the frame drop, and they even crash because they had delays in the rendering, things like that. So always try to test it out on a simulated race like this against the AI. Where you can simulate several race starts with no problem. And you will see a good representation of the GPU role. So far so good, over 100 FPS now that our cars are going. So far so good. I like the results. Think you can push my GPU a little harder. try it on the number one track. That will be some heavy stuff to load. I think I passed that guy on the now. Yes, he's working, but there is no sound signal. I don't know if I have to enable that. Well, so far, good performance of the GPU, not mine. Tire temperature really affects the grip here, it's incredible. After lockup like that, you have to cool down the tires, otherwise this happens. Alright, so let's see. That's what to do. Oh, I'm not sure if the changes I did cause anything, because one important thing about GPU adjustments is that some of the changes you will do, they only take effect after you restart. So the ones like in orange here, see, some changes take effect only after exiting the session. You will see in the description of some of their settings as well. I can't remember which ones, but probably anti-aliasing. Some of them will only, oh, HDR is one of them. This option requires a restart for changes to take effect. So some of these settings you have to exit the scene and load it back. It sucks because it takes a while sometimes, but you know, that's why I'm making this video, so you can do this less times than I did. I this, you know, I don't know, at least 100 times. I don't know. So hopefully you don't have to struggle like I do. I did. Um, oh, sorry, I didn't open my chat and I just saw someone here. And my apologies, I don't know if you're still there. Um, oh yeah, the no bezel thing, it's something from ASUS called the bezel free kit. So you can use that uh, to disguise, the bezel. I have mixed feelings about it because it kind of causes a little warping in the area where it's placed. But in the sense of getting rid of the bezels, it's a really interesting solution. I just think they have to improve that. This was the first experiment, uh, so I believe they are working to improve it. Uh, the bezels, let me chat here. So like I was saying, I have mixed feelings about it. It works, as you can see here, but when you are in the car moving and you see an object passing over there slowly, you notice the warping. So kind of distorts the image a little bit. Uh, so compared to before when I had the bezels, I barely noticed the bezels before, but for streaming and things like that, it really helps to pass that look and feel of the real car. My camera is not even positioned the right way here, but when you are the real car, because you don't have the bezels in there. As you can see now, my frame rate dropped significantly before 60. You can see the red bars at the top, I guess. So yeah, definitely I push it too hard now, and after the restart it causes the frame rate to drop. I'm right at the edge, which I will consider good because now it's back to normal and I didn't notice anything super weird on restart. God, the car. Watch it. What was that? Oh my gosh. I just got run over. Let's start over. Let me check before. So you can see no cars, 130 frames. As car starts to render, all that frame rate's going down. I know, I'm not sure if you can really see the frame rate on the top left of the screen. I hope you are. But those red signs, that means, the render is below the expected, which I established at 60. Remember that setting? I put 60 as a minimum. So it means that it's compressing something at this moment from the road, from the shadows, somewhere the quality is being degraded, should try to keep up with the frame rate. As you see, the cars are spreading out a bit. You get better. But I'm not noticing any, frame drops here, or the weird image transitions. Was still okay. Not ideal. Okay. Oh, that was really ugly. But yeah, so let's do another test. This time, I will turn off the motion blur just to see if that is what it was really affecting it. Unfortunately, I have to restart. Race again. While we do that, let me take time to see if you are actually seeing. Yeah, so right here in this corner you will see the frame rate. I'll try to move it to the center so we can see it better. If you don't know how to do that, actually if you press Alt plus the K key, it allows you to move those black boxes where you want them to be. So you can move them around in a place where it's more convenient for you. So in this case, I should have thought about that before. I could move that FBX box right here in the middle of the screen so I don't have to look up to see what's going on. So let's now move it to the center here when this thing reloads. GPU, by the way, also helps with the game load time. So in a track like that with a lot of cars, it loads a lot faster than with my former GPU. So let's see. We turn off motion blur. Let's see how much that affected. So I was at 58 frames per second. Alt K. Let's move the GPU box right here in the middle so we can look at them. And you can see it was already better, not a lot better, but already better, above the 60. Sometimes going to right there at the edge, but the motion blur didn't affect a lot on the soft setting, and it did give me a little bit of an edge, especially on the sides. I could notice the motion blur, which was fun. I think I'll leave it on. But I couldn't see that, how much that motion blur affected. Let's do another test. So let's see a lot of motion blur now, like medium strength. actually think it could have improved even more. I left the performance mode off on my stream, so let's turn it back on and let's see how much that affects, and then I'll turn it off again because we didn't see the correct representation when I turned it off, because I had the previews on my streaming, which consumes a lot of video power, GPU power to render the previews. So that's something I don't know if you know, but many stream apps like Streamlabs, they have this performance mode. So after you set it up your stream and you're sure that everything is in the right place, you can now turn on this performance mode, so you won't have the video preview, so you won't be using any GPU to render the cameras and the videos you are broadcasting as a preview here. So that saves a little bit of GPU power for you. So turn that on while you are racing and streaming. If you're not racing, and then it's okay to leave the preview on, you can see what's going on in the cameras. But while you're racing, you're probably not looking at yourself in the streaming, unless that's a thing for you, not here to judge. But let's see. Lots of motion blur. I can see the frame rates dropping to 54, 55, 55 on average. Yeah. Other cars render, yeah, 57, 56. As the car starts to move, the drop of the smoke. But still, I didn't notice any weird. Below 50, then you start to see 45, you start to see that weird, frame by frame image transition is noticeable. But at 55, you can barely notice it. I can notice more on the sides. And in terms of the benefits of the motion blur, I thought it would be more realistic. I don't notice it that much. So I don't know. Oh boy. I don't know if I am going to keep this setting on or not. Which is pretty good. Close to the edge here. I noticed the motion blur, especially on a distance, which kind of makes it cool. And you have the lateral movement also. It's a little more realistic. So far so good. Sometimes when you see more details in the track and more motion blur happening and the frame rate drops to a little bit below 60. This track is a little bit detailed. You see the clouds and lots of trees. It's kind of a heavy lifting to the GPU too. Kind of get the gist of it, but still a long way to go to drive F1 cars. Long way to go. Okay, let's go for the last test of the night, which is HDR, something I really want to show you, if possible. So for this, let's disable motion blur, and let's try to add HDR. And we will of course need to restart the scene again. So it seems that a little bit of motion blur would I would be able to keep up. So the soft one, the mid one is started to degrade. I notice very rare frame drops, um, but still, on maybe on a different setting that would significantly impact my race start. And it's really important to have at least 60 frames per second on a race start, because less than that means you're having a millisecond delay there on the car that is, you know, very close to you, a lot of cars together. That can cause you to crash and others to crash into you. So try to keep at 60 frames per second or FPS at a minimum in order to guarantee your race starts. And always remember to test that during a race start. If you test it with just one car on the track, that won't be the same. You know, if you're keeping 60 FPS without any other cars, that means when you get the other cars, you probably will drop to 45, sometimes even 30, and that's not ideal. So let's see now with HDR. So far so good, 67. Perhaps I'll be able to keep the HDR effect, which is great. Above 60 all the time. And for me, I don't know if you're perceiving, but the darker areas, the shadow, it looks a lot more realistic. It doesn't look like that video game image. It looks a lot more real. And iRacing is known to have these, you know, video games from the 2000s graphics. They're not as evolved as I said, of course, Sony. And I know the reason why. I know they're focusing more on the simulation side, which I love it. The only thing that I'm missing in racing to be a perfect game would be the rain. So when they put the rain in this game, then I don't need anything else. The only reason I keep playing Assetto Corsa Competition for Frankfurt is because of the races in the rain. Yeah, the HDR is so beautiful. Love it. There he goes, my front wing. So far the HDR effect held up well. Let's see, we have time for one more test. So, if I had to choose, let's see this setting here. It looks interesting. Let's test this option. And of course, I'll have to restart this thing. So on top of that, uh, there are some effects that you can apply on the NVIDIA card, GPU card. So you can apply filters that will let the image less gaming-like and more realistic. You can change that yellow kind of thing that iRacing adds to the image. You can enhance the contrast. You can do some tricks to make it look more realistic, but it will cost a little bit of GPU performance. So I don't recommend overdoing that while you are driving, but definitely for your replay for the races, things like that, it will look pretty cool if you have uh, you know uh, um, these effects applied. But I'll leave that for another session. We are way over time here. I just got overexcited about these things working pretty well. So the last test of the night, let's test this shadowing thing. So far I didn't notice anything too much here. I can see the mirror's image is it's lost a little bit of resolution. Let's see what they mean by this occlusion effect. But yeah, it affected frame rate a little bit, but still I got the 60 frames per second that I wanted. And I can see the shadows in the trees looking a lot more real. Wow! The guy hit my wheel and flew outside of the track. Gee. Let's start over. I didn't notice like anything out of extraordinary with this filter. I don't know, maybe it's just my limited capacity here. Yes, the trees there and the building, I think they look more realistic on the sides, that's for sure. But I don't know if I would sacrifice that much FPS for these effects. But let's see. I'll leave it this way right now and do some races. And maybe I'll come up with another video so we can talk about more of the other settings and how to enhance the image. You could definitely notice while I was going under that thing, the HDR with this effect created that, light changing effects of the eye, which was really cool. I wish we had more of the Legion test all the time. That would be awesome. Already? Want one full lap, please. Let's try it one more time. Then I'll sign off. It's weird. It seems like the FPS is higher now than it was before. I, see that effect going. That was cool. A little bit fake-ish because the sky kind of changed color. It's ever breaking that soon. I got wing damage. Yeah, it held up pretty well. seems to be good. I'll keep these settings for now. Thanks for watching tonight, and see you in the next video with more about GPUs. See you later.